There is a type of relationship that, if you have ever experienced it, you will recognize very quickly. When you show a lot of care text regularly, check in, pay attention, she feels warm, her voice softens, her replies feel closer, everything flows. But the moment you get a little busy, reply more slowly, or become less proactive, she turns cold, not angry, no arguments, just distant. And what confuses you most is not the coldness itself, but how quickly it happens. The issue is not that she changes. The issue is what triggers that emotional shift. With this first sign, I'm not talking about right or wrong, and I'm not saying she's good or bad. This is simply a very common psychological reaction. When someone has grown used to sensing their own value through external attention, their emotions begin to operate conditionally. Attention is present, warmth appears, attention is gone, warmth fades, not because they hate you, and not because they are deliberately acting this way, but because, inside them, feeling cared for is what keeps them feeling okay. So when you pull back even very slightly, their emotions pull back as well. What matters is that, if you stay in this kind of connection long enough, you begin to feel that you must constantly maintain a certain level of attention. Otherwise, everything starts to tilt, and that is when you feel tired without knowing why. Because real love does not work like that. Love does not need to be switched on every day in order to exist. It has a certain stability even when both people are busy, even when they are not talking continuously. The need for attention is different. It is like a switch. There must be a signal. There must be a response. There must be a constant presence. Without it, the emotion turns off. There is another state that many men fall into without realizing it. At first, the feeling that everything is always close, yet nothing ever moves forward. The two of you text a lot. You share all kinds of things throughout the day. She talks about work, family, and emotions. You're there too, listening, responding, caring, on the surface. It looks like a very intimate connection. But if you pause and look closely, you will notice one thing that never changes over a long period of time. The relationship does not take a clear next step. There is no definition, no clear direction. Everything just hovers in a state of, this is fine as it is. And what confuses you is that whenever you try to move forward, try to clarify, try to take the relationship to another level, she slows down. She does not outright reject you, but she does not walk forward with you either. Here, it is not that she's playing some sophisticated game. Usually, it is much simpler. Some people do not truly need a relationship to build a future. They need someone to fill an emotional gap in the present. You become the place she goes to talk when she's tired, when she is sad, when she needs to be heard. You give her the feeling of having someone there, without the responsibility or commitment that comes with moving forward. And so, the relationship is kept at the state most convenient for her emotions, close enough to avoid loneliness, far enough to avoid the pressure of progression. If you stay in this state for too long, you start to wonder whether you did something wrong or whether you need to try harder. But the truth is, the problem is not your effort. The problem is that you are being kept because your presence feels comfortable, not because she wants to build something long-term with you. And that is why this feeling of standing still is far more exhausting than being directly rejected. She keeps you so she is not lonely, so she can go far with you. At this sign, I want you to look at everything from a different angle, calmer, more grounded, more realistic. You may not be the only person present in her emotional world, not in the sense of betrayal, and not necessarily deception, but rather, around her, there are always a few other people to talk to receive care from, to gain attention from in different ways, and among them, you're often the most stable one, the one who is always there, the one who replies consistently, the one who truly listens. This can make you wonder whether you're being compared or replaced. But instead of reacting with jealousy, I want you to understand the nature of this behavior. For many people, attention does not come from a single source. They are used to having multiple small anchors to feel valuable. When one source weakens, they unconsciously look for another to compensate. Not because they are bad people, and not because they intentionally keep multiple people at the same time. More often, it is because they are not used to standing alone with their own emotions. Silence makes them uncomfortable. Emptiness makes them anxious. So they keep connections around them that are close enough to prevent that emptiness. And within that structure, you are the one who provides the greatest sense of safety Not necessarily the one chosen most deeply. What matters is this: when someone truly loves you, they do not need multiple sources of attention to feel valuable. They do not need a crowd to validate them. The connection with you alone is enough to make them feel at ease. If you constantly feel that you're only one part of a system that keeps her emotionally stable, rather than the center of her choice, that is a sign worth pausing and observing. A woman who truly loves you does not need a crowd to feel valuable. At this sign, I want you to broaden your perspective beyond just the relationship between the two of you and look at the larger context in which she is living. You may notice something very familiar. She is quite active on social media. She posts regularly. Stories go up constantly. She responds quickly to comments and messages from the outside world. It seems as if she is always present, always connected. But while the whole world can reach her easily, you feel that you are not truly at the center. You text her, but sometimes you have to wait. You want to talk more deeply, but the conversation drifts away. It feels as though you are always standing behind a screen where she is being seen more elsewhere. This does not necessarily mean that she does not care about you, and it is not because she is too busy. Usually, it is simpler than that. She is spending time where she feels more strongly recognized. Social media is a very easy stage for that feeling. Just showing up brings responses. Just sharing brings attention. And if someone is used to relying on being seen in order to feel okay, they will naturally invest more energy there. The issue is not social media itself. The issue is whether you are being placed in a position of priority. Someone who truly wants to build a deep connection with you will know how to step away from the stage and return to genuine presence. But if she needs the entire world to look at her in order to feel valuable, then it will be very difficult for you to be the most important person, no matter how much you are there. At this sign, many people begin to feel confused, even disoriented. Before this, you were the one who initiated more. You texted first, you checked in, you maintained the rhythm of connection, but then there comes a moment when you feel tired, or simply want to step back a little to see what happens when you're no longer always there. And at that very moment, her reaction changes. She starts asking more questions, showing more concern, sometimes anxious, sometimes irritated, sometimes clearly uneasy. This easily makes you think, maybe she truly misses you, truly needs you. But at this sign, I want you to slow down and look a little deeper. That reaction does not necessarily come from losing you. It comes from losing the feeling of being validated. When you are always proactive, you unintentionally become a stable source for her sense of I matter. So when you pull back, even slightly, that system is disrupted and panic appears. Not because she fears losing the relationship, but because she fears losing a familiar emotional state. You are like an anchor. When that anchor no longer holds firmly, insecurity rises very quickly. What matters is that if you look closely, anxiety is often not accompanied by a desire to understand you better or to build something clearer. It is simply accompanied by a need to pull you back into your old position. Back to texting regularly, back to giving more attention, back to making everything feel okay again. And if you stay in this loop long enough, you will begin to feel that you are being adjusted, rather than chosen. The sense of power may seem to tilt toward you, but in reality, you're being bound by another person's emotional reactions. And that is when you need to understand one thing clearly. She does not lack you. She lacks the feeling of being important. When you no longer provide that feeling consistently, the panic appears. Recognizing this is not about blaming anyone. It is about understanding where you stand in this relationship. This is the sign that, once you understand it, allows many of the things before it to suddenly fall into place. You may notice a strange contradiction in the way she responds to you. When you pursue her, when you take the initiative, when you create attention, everything feels relatively light. She is happy, relaxed, and easy to open up. But the moment you begin to speak more clearly about where the two of you stand, about going further, or simply about choosing her in a serious way, the atmosphere changes. She slows down, hesitates, sometimes avoids the conversation altogether. This leads many men to think they have done something wrong, or that they need to try harder to prove themselves. But at this sign, the issue is not that you're not good enough. It lies in the fundamental difference between the feeling of being pursued and the feeling of being chosen. Being pursued is an emotional game. It brings excitement, curiosity, and a sense of personal attractiveness. There is no clear responsibility, No binding commitment. Everything feels light and easy. Being chosen is different. When someone is truly chosen, they do not just receive affection, they also have to face the responsibility that comes with it, the responsibility to maintain the connection. The responsibility is not to stay halfway. The responsibility is not to use someone else's emotions to fill one's own emptiness. For people who are accustomed to living on attention, the moment of being chosen can create tremendous pressure. It forces them to define where they stand, what they want, and whether they are ready to walk alongside someone, and if they are not ready for that. The natural reaction is to pull back, not because they do not like you, but because they prefer the feeling of being pursued over the responsibility of a clearly defined relationship. This does not make them bad people. It simply shows that they are prioritizing short-term emotional gratification over deep connection. If you pay attention, you will notice that she is most comfortable when everything remains in the middle, when nothing has to be named, when no decision has to be made. But a real relationship cannot exist in that state forever. And once you understand this, you will stop trying to prove your value by pursuing harder. Because the problem is not that you're not enough, it is that she loves the journey of being pursued, not the destination of a clear choice. At this sign, many people tend to blame themselves. You have no clear evidence, nothing specific you can point to. She's not doing anything obviously wrong, yet somehow, you rarely feel truly at ease. You do not have a concrete reason to doubt, but inside, there is always a very subtle, hard-to-name sense of unease. You try to ignore it. You tell yourself that you're overthinking, that maybe you just need to relax. But the feeling does not go away. It simply stays there quietly, following you from one day to the next. At this sign, I am not advising you to speculate or to create baseless suspicions. I only want you to respect your own internal experience, because real insecurity rarely comes from thought. It does not come from imagining worst-case scenarios. It comes from a mismatch in energy between two people. You give a great deal of presence, a great deal of attention, but what you receive in return does not provide a corresponding sense of safety. There is momentary warmth, but a lack of stability. There is closeness, but no solid foundation. And your body senses this before your rational mind does. When someone truly loves you, you do not have to guess. You do not have to analyze every message, every reaction. You feel at ease, even when the two of you are not in constant communication. But when you are merely providing attention to someone, even if they respond sometimes and withdraw at others, there is always a vague sense of worry inside you. Not because you are weak, but because your intuition is trying to tell you that this connection is not built on safety. That feeling is not meant to scare you, it is meant to be heard. When you love someone, you feel safe. When you're only giving them attention, you feel anxious. Before ending, I want to be clear about one thing. What you've just heard is not meant to blame her, and it is not meant to blame you. Everyone acts based on what they carry inside. Some people need attention to feel okay. Others give attention because they believe that is how a connection is maintained. Neither of these is wrong. The only issue is whether the two of you are seeking the same thing. This video is not meant to make you suspicious, nor to make you cold or closed off. It is simply meant to help you understand what kind of connection you are in. Is it a relationship that provides safety, or merely a loop in which you are constantly required to keep someone else feeling okay? There are relationships that do not hurt you immediately. There are no major arguments, no obvious breakdowns. But over time, you begin to feel more tired, more anxious, and less like yourself. The sense of safety fades so slowly that you do not realize it until it is almost gone. And most importantly, this is not about forcing yourself to make an immediate decision. It is about learning to listen to that feeling, the feeling of whether, when you are with someone, you are able to be yourself, whether you feel at ease, or whether you are always adjusting, always trying, always maintaining the rhythm so that things do not fall apart. When you begin to respect your own sense of safety, you will naturally know whether you should stay or walk away, not out of fear, but out of clarity. And that is where a healthy relationship truly begins with another person, and with yourself.